Welcome back to the channel. Here is my personal quickfire top 10 list of antiques and vintage items to keep your eyes open for in 2022-2023. Number 1. Vintage watches. The vintage watch market, and in particular the Rolex watch market, continues to grow steadily, with models made during the last 40 or 50 years in particular in high demand. Inadvertently, last year Rolex helped the vintage market by increasing the prices of their current watches, and as such second-hand watches have followed suit by going up in value. A little tip here: don't be afraid of watches that need refurbishing or repair, as patina or imperfections that were once considered undesirable, for example faded dials, have become sought after, as modern models don't suffer from this kind of wear or patina, which is attractive to some collectors. However, be aware of the high cost of repair and restoration. It can be expensive to get them repaired. Number 2 on my list are vintage toys. Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, you could pick up vintage toys at car boots and flea markets for 10 a penny. But now, the rarer examples are becoming harder to find, particularly toys from the golden era of the 1970s and 80s. Such as Star Wars models and figures. People have been going crazy for these old toys and will pay a fortune for rare examples, especially online, where you can find a good supply. However, steer clear of modern replica or mass-produced toys where there are millions of examples listed that will never increase in value due to the sheer number available. Interestingly, vintage board games are becoming increasingly popular and are now in quite high demand, with sales climbing significantly. Of course, classics such as wind-up toys, corgi and dinky toys continue to do well, and there is increased demand for genuine and original action figures and franchise-driven toys from the 70s and 80s, particularly, for example, Marvel, DC and most Hollywood feature film figures. The trick to investing in vintage toys is to source the original, rare, and steer clear of the mass-produced modern toys. Third on my list is vintage clothing. Not my area of expertise at all, even though some of my friends reckon my choice of clothing demonstrates a healthy knowledge of vintage fashion. I don't know. Fueled by Etsy, Vinted and Depop, and driven by Generation Z, or Generation Z if you're from the United States, by 2024 the global market is predicted to rise to $64 billion, or £52 billion. Can you believe it? This market is obviously driven by quality designer clothing, so keep your eyes open for those 1970s Vivienne Westwood punk t-shirts. Alternatively, look out for brand names such as Adidas, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren and Fila, or early runway designs by designers such as Yamamoto and Miyake, who are two of the top contemporary names to look out for. So don't wait for them to become officially old enough to be truly vintage, but rather buy them now. Number 4 on my list is antique and vintage jewellery. Again, not an area I deal in, but according to other dealers and auction houses, Victorian and early 20th century jewellery is becoming increasingly popular with both collectors and fashionistas alike. Quite often, antique and vintage jewellery can be unique and great value for money compared to contemporary jewellery, so it's worth getting your hands on it for fashion as well as investment reasons. So my advice is to look out for quality hallmarked examples and you could be onto a winner. Even now you can still pick up antique gold and silver designer jewellery at flea markets and car boots. So when you see a box of costume jewellery, it's always worth digging through it to see what is hiding in that box. And don't forget vintage Scandinavian jewellery. This can also be worth money, so do your research, learn a few makers' names and get digging in those boxes. At number 5 is space-related collectibles. Why not reach for the stars when you are sourcing stock for sale or investment? Most people thought that space memorabilia would slow down after NASA's 50th anniversary of the moon landing in 2019. However, sales remain strong, particularly with younger buyers. Now you might be thinking, how come? Well, some people attribute this to fans of Elon Musk and his SpaceX project. So don't restrict yourself to vintage collectibles, as the space race for investment is definitely one for the future. For example, I recently picked up this action figure of astronaut Buzz Aldrin, and it will probably be a keeper. At number 6 in my list is mid-century modern. Currently in 2022, mid-century modern is bang on trend. The mid-century modern period typically covers the 1950s, 60s and into the 70s. However, every dealer can define it differently, with a few years either way. Almost anything related to this period, including furniture, lighting and art, is now of interest to collectors and dealers, and it sells fast and for good money. There are no signs of this slowing anytime soon, but be aware, like most antique and vintage markets, there are trends, fads, and particular styles can come into and go out of fashion. So it's all about picking the right moment to sell. At number 7 is automobilia and petrolina. Sales of signage, oil cans, posters and emblems, well, anything related to the automotive world really is selling well. Really well, in fact, and particularly online. Collectors and dealers in this market are fanatical and knowledgeable, so you will usually find yourself in a battle at an auction to win a bid. So be prepared to pay up for the right item. Its popularity is fueled currently by the amount of car restoration TV shows, and this continues to demonstrate just how popular this category is. Try buying a vintage auto-related enamel sign or tin oil can and you'll soon find out the value of these rusty relics. However, it's never too late to jump on the bandwagon, get it? And there is no sign of this market devaluing anytime soon. At number 8 on my list is good old Art Deco. The Art Deco period was at its heyday in the 1930s. Think of Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot TV series as a reference, and you will soon get a good idea of the geometric design so typical of the period. Ever popular and always sought after, dealers have acknowledged that demand and prices for high-end Art Deco pieces have grown considerably, with sales of small items such as clocks, jewellery, lighting and decorative objects proving also to be big sellers. However, beware of ivory content in Art Deco, particularly when it's incorporated into Art Deco bronze statues, as it's now illegal to sell the majority of ivory products other than a few exemptions in the UK. At number 9 in my list are vinyl records and vintage audio equipment. One of my favourite niches, as I have a growing collection of my own. Vinyl records in particular continue to find new fans all the time, particularly with the younger market who love the warm audio quality of the vinyl. Quick tip here, albums from the big names remain ever popular, but records by lesser known artists are also doing well. So do a bit of research and keep your eyes open in particular for rock, blues and jazz albums, as well as original pressings by big name artists. Obviously, with this increase in sales of vinyl comes a demand for vintage audio equipment such as turntables and amps, which are selling well in an ever-growing market. Finally, at number 10 in my list is art and sculptures. Dealers are reporting a huge increase in the amount of art being invested in and sold. Interest in and the price of early 20th century pieces has risen sharply, while brutalist mid-century metal sculptures also remain highly desirable. Art is still plentiful at flea markets and car booths, but you do have to be discerning in what you buy. Look out for the artist's signature, maybe a date, the subject matter and any details on the back of the frame, including evidence that it has previously been through an auction, for example. Be warned, however, if you invest in the wrong type of art, it can lose you money, as even 19th century originals can sell for just a few pounds in auction. My advice is to research the market and invest in up and coming young professionally trained artists to give yourself a chance of making a profit. It will be a long-term investment, but you can have the pleasure of hanging the painting in your home while you wait for it to hopefully appreciate in value. Also, and this is just a tip, look out for folk art, which can currently be picked up quite cheaply. One for the future maybe. The theme for the 2020s appears to be the mixing and matching of these pieces with modern or mid-century decor. So to sum up, competition between dealers for the best pieces of art is definitely hotting up, with prices expected to rise significantly. So be aware of the pitfalls in art investment before you commit to paying up. So there you go, my top 10 tips for buying antiques, vintage and collectibles. You may agree or you might disagree with my choices. Let me know in the comments below. Either way, the important thing is to invest within your means and enjoy the whole process of hunting for treasure and haggling for the best price. Don't forget, sometimes it's more about owning a piece of history than investing for profit. So follow your interests, passion and have some fun doing it. That's all for now, folks. New subscribers, let me know where in the world you are based. Subscribe, like, follow, comment and share. Hit the notification bell and I'll see you next time.